Greetings and welcome to video number 11 of the Greater Reality Healing Program. Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick. To learn more about me, please visit soulproof.com/about so that you know where I'm coming from. You're in good hands on this. Please watch previous videos if you haven't already. You'll get a lot more out of this one. And finally, articles mentioned are free at soulproof.com/articles. We're at key number 10 to helping you journey from deeply grieving to brightly shining. As discussed in the intro, this is about optimally handling losses of any type, that from a limited human perspective, I should say changes of any type, that from a limited human perspective look like losses, seem like tragedy, and so on. However, when you see more of the big picture of life, the greater reality, you understand that it's just part of life and all good. And you can handle this and find the silver linings, heal, transform, help others, fulfill your soul's missions. I mean, there's so much good news about all this. So one of the most powerful ways to know what I'm talking about and really know it within is to use centering practices. Centering practices are defined as any sort of activity or non-activity that helps quiet your brain, because remember that your brain thinks it knows everything, but in reality it perceives much less than 1% of what's going on. So it's important to quiet your brain periodically, every day if you can, so that you can better recall the true nature of reality, so that you're not a slave to your brain's incessant and very limited analysis. So some of the ways people have found that they can quiet their brain: prayer, meditation, time in nature, exercise, music, playing with pets and children, sewing, gardening, breath work, drumming, serving others, yoga, and spiritual fellowship. One of my spiritual teachers from the mid-70s, Ram Dass, told about a lecture he was giving at Harvard, and he was sharing his greatest understandings about the big picture of life. And it was out there, packed auditorium, but in those days, mostly young, hippie-ish students. But in the front row, he said, was this like 85-year-old woman. She was knitting while she listened, and she had this big hat on with fake fruit and so on. And he's like, oh, what is she doing here? And yet everything he described about his deep understandings about how life is set up, she nodded her head. And after a while, he thought, well, maybe she has a palsy of her head, and her head shakes. But then you realize, no, she's nodding her head at just all the right times. So after the talk, he went up to her and he said, I've got to ask you, you seem to understand everything I'm talking about. How do you know all this? And he said, she leaned in a conspiratorial voice said, I crochet. And that's it, you turn off the brain. Such an important key. In the East, there's a saying, the brain is a wonderful slave, but a horrible master. So please spend a little time, at least most days, to do whatever helps you keep in the now moment, feel the peace that passes all understanding, and to be still and know that you are part of God, part of all that is. Centering practices can help you realize that change is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. Now, I just mentioned a phrase that's one of my favorites: have the peace that passes all understanding. In my youth, while attending Lutheran church, our ministers would end the service with that benediction. May the peace that passes all understanding fill your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. And even at a young age, maybe I was 8 or 9, I thought, the peace that passes all understanding. That sounds like a good thing. That sounds like something I want more of in my life. And you can have it when you know that life and love are forever. when you understand that you're not alone in this universe and that you are always watched over, guided, assisted, and loved, angels and the light, and you're part of that light. That's part of your birthright, your very nature. So the more you know all that, the easier it is to accept when changes happen, even bodily death of loved ones, people and pets. Those are just natural parts of life. Thus the saying, death is just a comma, not a period, in life's never-ending saga. And you may want to write that one down. You know, any of these phrases that really jump out at you, type them up, write them up, post them where you'll see them often, so they become part of your operating system instead of perhaps some of the erroneous and limiting teachings from the past. Now, another way to calm your brain, in addition to using these centering practices, is to minimize exposure to negative, superficial, and sensationalistic news, especially before going to sleep. Do you really need to watch the 11 o'clock news and hear what murder just happened or what fire is going on? Well, you're going to go out there and help put out the fire or find the murder. So you don't want your mind stewing on all that while you sleep. So that's why it's good to have non-stimulation beforehand. You know, read a peaceful book or say prayers or listen to relaxing music, for example. Now, also, unless there's an ongoing emergency in your life, you don't need to check your phone calls, texts, and emails so often. As you well know, some people are just glued to that, and that also stimulates the brain. Overstimulation is a real problem right now, and it starts with food, or that's one of the causes of it. You understand that a lot of fast foods, junk foods, especially as containing sugars, either cane sugar or artificial sugars, are stimulating. They stimulate the brain, and that's one reason why kids get hooked on that. And then when they try things like cocaine, they really like it because it's also stimulating. So you want to minimize your exposure to all that. Regarding TV, do you really need to stay updated about the latest Hollywood divorces, political bickerings, or salaries of sports superstars? I'll guarantee you when you pass on, you'll wish you had done less of that and focus more on what's really important. Your loved ones, taking care of the temple of your soul, enjoying life, nature, and so on, serving others, helping others, and understanding the nature of reality so that you can have the peace, joy, love, gratitude that is your birthright. So in general, it's okay to keep generally informed. You know, you can glance about what's going on in the world, but I don't recommend that you let yourself get too hooked on too much news that can stress your brain and body. Likewise with excess computer games, videos, TV viewing becomes an addiction. And then people, I mean, you see them, their foot's bouncing and their hands are moving. Little kids, it's really a problem. As with addictive drugs, a tolerance develops, whether we're talking about, again, white sugar, white flour, food stimulus, or TV viewing and so on, that sort of stimulation. People need more to get their fix. So keep an eye on that one, please. Because to the point, we're talking about healthy grieving here. Well, that can be delayed if you stay in denial, if you're focused on other frivolous things, if you get sidetracked and you don't work on yourself. So minimizing the list above, TV, video games, etc., will give you extra time and clarity for optimal grieving. And then when you've upgraded your energy to higher ones and released, healed the lower energy emotions, pain, sadness, guilt, etc., then that's when you have a much more wonderful life and can share it with others. So again, remember that suffering is inevitable, or let's say change is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Another way, another saying about that, I love sayings, I've collected them throughout my life. You can't stop the birds of suffering from flying over your head, but you can prevent them from making a nest in your hair. And yes, that one's pretty easy for me. In helping parents heal, we have a saying, the bodily death of your child can make you better or bitter. It's a choice. It's a moment-by-moment choice. What are you going to focus on? As the story goes, which wolf are you going to feed? And the same way with any sort of bodily death of loved ones, or with any big change in life. Is it going to make you better or bitter? It's up to you. But the information, the resources in this program can help you make your life a work of art no matter what's going on around you or to you. So, suffering is certain. This is an important one. I remember almost to the day when I realized this. Suffering is certain if you want everything to stay the same. Shifting from I must have this to I prefer this helps a lot. I think Ken Key was the author who talked about this. Shifting your must-haves to preferences. Really, really important. And there were some songs. I mean, there are so many songs over the years that talk about change. David Bowie, Changes. Jimi Hendrix, My Mind's Been Going Through These Changes. The band Yes, and a song called Perpetual Change. So again, just realize you want everything to stay the same, you've set yourself up for suffering. But if you can be open to change and say, okay, it's a new moment, here we go, and especially when you understand the big picture of life, then you're in great shape. So again, about the centering practices, regularly quieting your brain gives your wise consciousness, your inner self, your higher consciousness, a chance to speak up and remind you of all this. And then that's when what we're talking about in this program is actually fairly easy. But it takes a whole lot of words to describe the process. But when it happens, it's like that, and you think, gosh, why didn't I realize this a long time ago? Or why didn't I make this shift a long time ago? Kind of funny how that works. So some suggested action steps for this key. First, choose 2 or more centering practices that seem best for you. Use those for a while, whether that's yoga, walking in nature, playing with a pet, art, and then later on maybe you want to add some others. Make some time nearly every day, even 15 minutes, to quiet your brain so you can hear your inner wisdom better. And as discussed, minimize your exposure to excess stimulation. To learn more about centering practices, see the articles number 68, The Big Picture of Life, number 77, Centering Practices, and 86, Breathing Techniques. That's it for this video, kind of a short one, and we'll see you in the next video when we talk about key number 11, to realize how magnificent life is. Until then, let it shine.